So, Greg, have you seen Wakanda Forever?
I have not seen it yet.
I have seen it, and there's quite a few spoilers in this comic book we're about to review because we accidentally stumbled into the comic book that inspired large parts of the movie. And we didn't even do it on purpose.
It was all by happenstance.
Yeah, it's a complete accident because we're reviewing Iron Man 120, the start of the Demon in the Bottle storyline. But also on the cover is some guy called the Submariner.
The Submariner.
Naked Submariner and Iron Man. And looks like is he throwing rocks at Iron Man?
It looks like there's rocks, there's Iron Man, there's Submariner. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on.
I mean, if I was going to throw anything at Iron Man, it probably wouldn't be rocks.
I mean,
he's Iron Man.
He's Iron Man, but I mean, why not throw what he's made of at him?
I guess. I mean, you hit iron with iron.
And it explodes. Have you ever hit two hammers together at the same time? It's dangerous.
No, because I'm not an idiot. I really didn't know how to respond to that. I'm sorry.
And that's why.
Nope.
Well, and that's why the Submariner's throwing rocks at the Iron Man, because he's hoping that maybe the iron in the rocks will break the iron in the suit.
That is fair. That's fair.
See, it's pretty smart.
I have too much trauma trying to hit baseballs in the cold Washington weather with aluminum bats when I was a kid to hit two hammers together.
Hands with her.
Just too much trauma from that.
I just remember as a kid, my dad caught me taking two hammers and smacking them together, and he was like, "What are you, stupid? You're gonna like break those, and you had to take you to the hospital because you're gonna like shatter into your face or something." I was like, I didn't know how.
Well,
I don't know how science works.
This is the Invincible Iron Man 120.
Yay!
And can I just say, God bless Bob Layton. This guy is a great storyteller, and here's why, right? So we'll get into the credits. We're going to flip the page. We're going to get into credits. So David Michelinie is the words and plot. And David Michelinie wrote, in one of my opinions, 10 issues of one of the worst series of comics I've ever read. Karate Kid, which is much maligned on this podcast.
So good.
The Legion of Superhero crossover book from the 70s. And it was really bad. I think he didn't even put his name on some of it. So it's not like he liked it either. And I'm sure there was probably some editorial stuff. And note, he ends up at Marvel just a couple years later. So I can see there's probably some mutual dislike, I would say, probably. But he takes over this book, I think, at 116 with Bob Layton doing the inking and the plot. And then we have John Romita Jr., the much maligned artist on this podcast. And Bob Layton makes John Romita Jr. look amazing.
Yeah.
With the finished art.
It does look really good.
I do think John Romita may have just been better when he was younger, too. Or at least, I shouldn't say better. Here's the thing. We all have opinions about the art style I like. I hate the long, elongated faces and craziness of and just kind of laziness to me of the John Romita pencils now. Mm-hmm. This looks really nice.
It does.
Of course, Bob Layton did the cover on his own. So the really cool Iron Man and Namor cover is from Bob Layton. But when we get into this book, I mean, the faces look really good. I think Tony looks really realistic for what I would think he would look like.
Oh, like everybody looks very captured on the page. They look like the detail in each one of these images. I'm just totally like, wow. I've looked at this book twice now. This will be my third time, and I'm like, each time I've looked at it, I'm just totally in awe by the lines and the just the way that everything comes across on the page.
Now, I will say, in this case, I don't own the originals of this. So we are reading off of MarvelUniverse.com. So we do get some recolors and some touch-ups on the color. So the colors are going to be brighter than the original book pages, especially when you go from, the cream of a 70s comic book, right, with the newsprint to this bright white we're getting as our background. So it is going to be a little bit different with the touch-ups on the colors and everything. But even with that said, this looks really nice. And I imagine looked nice at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Probably can't afford this book, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, no.
And we chose this in line, so we were going to bounce forward past the Titans issues and get to something good later. And we were chatting at the end of the last podcast and just said, well, why don't we go back and do the Iron Man story? It's before the Titans books in 84, but this is from 1979. But it's still something from the era. And I think this is a good way to close out sort of the 70s and 80s. And then we can get into 90s, 2000s if we want to continue this theme.
Yeah.
This is going to be a long one. There are 8 issues in the story arc.
Yeah, it's a long one. And I think like it's interesting too, because like when I was, I mean, my introduction to this, like this is the first time I've read it since I was, since high school. But I read it before that when I was a kid, because this is one of those runs that I had gotten from my dad and my uncle, because this is something that they had when after they got out of the service. And it was like one of those odd, like, oh, here you go. It's Iron Man. You're going to like this. It's comic book. And as we get into it, I don't know if I would give it to a kid.
Yeah.
No, but
yeah,
boy, I was into it when I was 7, man.
Probably not my first choice to hand to a kid. That seems interesting.
Yeah, no, I was all about this.
But in that classic sense too, I think they probably read it and then just thought, well, these are funny books, right? You hand them to a kid.
Yeah. It's Iron Man. It's a comic book. You just, it's a cool story. It's
interesting that critique's going on with a 1979 comic book, considering that we still do those critiques now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still that issue with, hey, and I would suggest it to anybody. If you're handing a book to a kid, you should probably read it first.
Right. I know when, as a creator myself, people come up and they're like, they know, oh, you write these type of kid books. And then they see the other books that I do. And they're like, oh, are these for kids? No, those are not for kids. They look cool and kids probably want to read them, but they are not for kids.
Yeah. And we're talking like horror books and things like that.
Yeah.
We're not talking triple X rated stuff.
No, they're just,
you're making it sound like you were, boom chicka bomb bomb books.
No. I'm talking like the scary stuff and the things like as soon as you open it up, you're like, oh yeah, no, this is adult level, like A24 horror, or, not A24 horror. I mean, like Blumhouse horror, that kind of stuff, A24 suspense, that kind of stuff.
And that's the point too. I think you see how a writer and an artist, especially when you pair them up, but a writer too can really deviate depending on the frame of the story. Mm-hmm. Like you are very intentional about your storytelling with Junior Braves to make it's a book by kids about kids.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is. And this book here is not. It's very adult. And that doesn't mean you don't write other stories.
Right.
You just retired after writing one story.
Yeah.
No more.
That's it. I put a pin in my stuff. I said, that's it. I'm done. No. And that's the thing too, is like you can read this and you can read other things that these creators have done too, and see where, oh, they did this type of book, and then they did this type of book, and it's like, wow, this is a meaty book. This is a meaty series with a lot of density to it and thought.
Yeah.
Makes you think about the character and the development of the character. So,
with all that in mind,
yeah.
I think we probably should start digging into the book a little bit. But I did want to share with everybody why we went here, and I love the fact this is going to be one of those times when this is my first time reading these books. Greg's going to know a lot more about these stories than I am, and we're switching over to Marvel. And I think this is a good switch in the sense we've done a lot of DC and we've done a lot of stuff that is my favorite. Mm-hmm. We switch over to something that's one of Greg's favorites. So I read this for the first time. I ended up reading the 8-issue run. Then I went back and read the start of the Michelinie and Layton run, mm-hmm. The 4 issues before. And then I read a few issues afterwards, and I paused for a minute. I was traveling a little bit, so I was on a plane where I could be by myself and read. So that was nice. But yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
I wanted to read more. And, when you get into comics, that's obviously what they want. So if I had been reading this, not in 1979, because I would have been 5. So I don't think that would have been. But if you had handed this to me in, say, 1990 and said, go find these in the back issue bins, I would have been all over this.
Oh, yeah.
And one of my I have never really liked Iron Man.
You're like, Iron Man. Why do I like that guy? He reminds me of somebody. He's like,
well, I don't like him in this story either. I don't like him.
Yeah.
But I like the story.
Yeah.
And that's been my issue too. A lot of my Iron Man exposure was during like Civil War and things like that and crossovers. And when they brought back the Avengers, when Brian Michael Bendis brought back the Avengers, right, and killed everybody off and then tried to make it the original Avengers. And I just didn't enjoy the Iron Man character. And then I really hated the whole government Iron Man character. And honestly, too, after reading this, and let's get into this toward the end of the podcast, his Civil War character makes no sense.
After reading this?
The story, the full run of the story.
Yeah. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. And that'll definitely be a discussion.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I shouldn't say it makes no sense because there are certainly ties before. And I will say leading into this story, we do get a little bit of S.H.I.E.L.D. and being captured. And there's more of that in the story. So we're going to get some S.H.I.E.L.D. in this story. We're going to get a new Iron Man. We get 2 new characters in this run. Rhodey is one of those characters, and we'll find out real soon. And we'll introduce the other character in a couple minutes. And then leading it, actually, we should introduce Cabe as well, his bodyguard, who becomes his bodyguard. I'm going to go 2 issues back. So this is the start of the story. But 2 issues back, he ends up at a function, just like a function for high society folks. And he meets Ms. Cabe, and he grabs a drink, and he comments, "I'm glad this is here. This is the only way I could get through this." So they do start to plant the seeds before they get in here, which I think is really good storytelling. I love it when subplots are planted throughout a book and a creator really has a direction of where they want to go, and then they're going to tie these subplots back in. I think that's some really fantastic stuff. And before I get too far into, I do want to share, I grabbed issue 28, and you can only get these in... Unfortunately, you cannot get them in print form, at least from Tomorrow's. You may be able to find one on eBay somewhere. But I got back issue number 28 and 25. And in 25, they interview Layton and Michelinie and really dig into this. And then 28 is an issue all about heroes gone wrong, heroes gone bad. So there's a short article about this part of Iron Man in there too. So I did use Tomorrow's Publishing once again. I just want to give them some credit for some of the research I did on these issues.
Very good. Yeah, no, I when you sent me the homework, I took a look at that as well. It's pretty good.
They weren't long articles, but they were good.
Yeah.
I really liked the interview with Michelinie and Layton. I recommend it. I'll probably forget to link them, but for now, I would tell you just go to Tomorrow's and get back issue number 25 and 28 if you want to dig more into this. So here we are. And excuse me, sir, would you like a magazine to read? What year are we in again?
Right. They give you magazines. They have all service on this airplane.
He's flying on a 747, so I want to know where he's going if he's on a 747.
Well, I mean,
a jumbo jet.
Yeah, and I mean, back in the day, 747. I mean, at this time, in this time frame, 747 would be like on like the height of luxury airplane. I mean, a lot of people nowadays, younger listeners don't understand, but a 747 double-decker airplane had a bar and a whole entire upper deck area, like a lounge area. So imagine you go up a staircase, and on the upper level of that aircraft, there was a whole entire area that was like a first-class lounge area. So very luxurious for its time.
Yeah, and this is really a time, too, when airlines were for the rich. I mean, airline deregulation happens in 81, I think. You probably confirm that. Right around that time... Actually, no, 78. So it says Carter signed the Airline Deregulation Act into law in 78, but I imagine it took a couple years to get going. And so with that said, it did make airline travel cheaper, but it is now the airline travel that you experience now. It is the cattle herding onto the plane. So I'm probably glad it happened, right? Since now I can actually afford to fly in an airplane. But at the same time, it is a very different experience than... portrayed here.
You got to remember too. I mean, at this time, in this time frame, people dressed up to go on planes. They, there was a whole entire you got hot meals. There was, everything. It was an experience. And it's like, I remember as a kid, the 2 times that we flew out to Washington before we moved here, I was in awe of just this whole entire experience, because it was so wild. My parents made me dress in my Sunday's best, and we're getting like, it was like going, I mean, obviously we were on a trip, and it was a big deal. And now it's like you go on in flip flops, and you're wearing pajama pants and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, it's different. I mean, if I was getting treated in the lap of luxury, maybe I would dress up a little bit differently, but I'm not. And I will say I went on as a kid too. And I remember my experience, we were flying and my uncle was with us, but somehow my mom had seats in a different class than my uncle. And so I looked at the ticket agent, and I with my big little Danny Shabbat red hair and big hazel eyes, looked up and said, "Can my uncle sit with us?" And she took his ticket back and ripped it up right in front of me and gave him a new ticket that was right across from me.
Oh,
and so awesome. Yeah, like that's happening now.
Yeah, no. I'm sorry. He is in the wrong seat service. He did not.
And not only that, he paid for a ticket that you're not allowed to upgrade under any circumstances. So no amount of money could get us moved.
That's right.
Well, here we are, and Tony he's got some gin hanging out there.
He's got a whole entire service card on his little tray.
He's got like 3 of them, and he's hanging out in that 747.
Mm-hmm.
And he says it's a nice way to relax. That is for most men. But he gets offered a magazine, and he says, no thanks, but I'd take another martini.
Yeah.
That's right. And she's like, "You've already had 3. And he said, "Yes, miss. I am sure I want one." He said, "After all, I'm drinking for 2 men, him and Iron Man." I don't know that it works that way.
I mean, I don't think the human liver is supposed to split into 2 for 2 personalities, but
well, I mean, I believe the actor that plays him probably believed the same thing at one point too. So
yeah, that's how you end up in a bed that's not yours.
Yeah. Well, then we get a little bit of a recap. So we find out that he was fighting the Spy Master, and that was a plot line that Michelinie and Layton cleaned up early in the run. Mm-hmm. We also got rid of, is it Madam Mask?
Yeah.
Okay. Madam Mask. So that was his ex-girlfriend, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What was her name? Putting you on the spot. If you don't know, that's okay.
I don't know.
But you know the books better than I do, and I'm totally blanking on her name. And you went silent, so I'm going to assume you don't know. Or the dogs are barking.
Yeah.
So
both.
Here we go. And but so they immediately sort of wrap up some plot lines from the last creative team and start moving him into this plot line. But they give us a little recap here. And we find out that, too, he saved a helicarrier from Russian defense missiles. And so that was part of the SHIELD storyline that was setting up in this, too. So we had a couple of setups. So he saves a SHIELD helicarrier from some rogue SHIELD agents, and and the helicarrier ended up flying into Russia, and then he saves it, and then he shakes hands with our good friend
David Hasselhoff.
It does kind of look like David Hasselhoff.
That's why he played him.
That's fair. Our good friend Samuel Jackson from SHIELD.
Yeah, well, I mean,
not
here. Yes, but
yeah. So, and then he is looking at the stock, and we find out that Nick Fury wants them to manufacture munitions, and he doesn't want to. So SHIELD is trying to take over Stark Industries. This is another subplot that's rolling through.
He's like, I don't want their money.
Yeah, and so he seems a little stressed out. So he says, she gets him his drink. He said, will there be anything else? He's like, no, just the drink. I'll drink one more martini. Sounds good. There's olives in first class. Maybe I'll get a martini. I'm supposed to be flying in first class tomorrow. And if you you'll probably figure out, you're already laughing. There's no way my plane's taking off. I finally got an upgrade from to first class with my miles. I didn't even have to pay for it, right? It's just like the status thing.
Yeah.
And on a day when the entire airport's probably going to be snowed out. So that's fantastic.
Poor Dan.
So we've got a couple here, and they see a tank flying at a plane.
Oh no.
That seems bad.
I mean, what's crazy is, I mean, like, I like you think that could never happen, but if you've ever seen the A-Team movie, you know it can.
Yeah. Or well, did you hear about that flight to Hawaii a couple days ago?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Throwing people into the sky. I love that one person was like, I just couldn't sit down in time to get my seatbelt on. I was like, they give you lots of warning about turbulence. I think you probably just weren't wearing your seatbelt, but
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there.
Neither
So,
here nor
but I love it. You were talking about the planes. We got a guy in a Hawaiian shirt, but the wife is in her Sunday best,
there. Mhm.
and they're reading, and they're like, but this can't happen in first class. Wham!
Bam! Oh no, it did.
And so, and honestly, too, if I'm going to be critical of Michelinie, right? I hope I'm saying David Michelinie's name right. You can, but it's, I don't know if it's Michelinie or Michelinie, but or neither. I probably could just mess it up 100,000 times, so I'll just keep saying it 3 different ways. But one of the things I don't enjoy about his scripting is kind of the, I don't know, the Greg-like humor you would put in the script.
Oh, my mother's snowshoes?
Yeah, like that. Well, I was thinking maybe you wouldn't put that line, but I could see you writing that, but it can't be this is first class line in there.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just cheesy as hell. And so that a little bit takes away from the story from me. But again, too, I like that I like that him and Bob Layton build a world around Tony, right? It's not just Tony. And their world building, they're doing some character building, but they also make the situations around him, I don't know, it's not necessarily real, but they give some life to them. How's that?
Mm-hmm.
Like those characters are ridiculous that are in the story.
Very.
But I probably could see them flying on planes now. But it does give some fun levity to the story. And now, obviously, it gets a little crazy. Like we got some guy that looks Jesus-like saying it's Armageddon, the tank of God.
Yeah.
So it's some of that stuff too, right? Like, while I appreciate it, sometimes it's a little cheesy for me. It takes me a little bit out of the story.
A little bit,
and
but I mean, if you've ever been on an airplane with some bad turbulence or some bad issues going on, people get a little riled up and they say a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and then this lady in the bathroom, I just okay. Tony goes to change into Iron Man, but there's a lady in the bathroom, so he can't get in. The challenges of a superhero. That's very Spider-Man like, isn't it?
Very.
It doesn't seem very Iron Man like. It seems more Spidey like, but okay. Or even like Batman 66.
Very. Yeah. I gotta get in here.
Yeah.
Change.
But it's kind of fun. So he finally gets in there and he gets in the Iron Man suit. Then he puts it on and he blasts his way through the plane, which can't be very good for the plane.
Boom, right out. Yeah, no. It's like he was trying to
He just depressurized the cabin. I don't know that was the best idea.
Oh, he's got to save the people somehow.
Sure. But the tank hit the engine, which is amazing, but didn't tear off the wing,
it broke it a little bit.
It broke it a little bit. A tank hitting a wing broke it a little bit.
I mean,
the plane's intact though. That's because at the Boeing company, we make phenomenal planes.
747s are very robust. Side note, the 747 interior was designed by the creator of He-Man.
Really?
Little known fact.
Fantastic. And who is the creator of He-Man?
Oh man, it's Curses. Hold on a second. I have his autograph downstairs because I sat next to him.
Well, while you look that up, we're gonna move on with the story here. And it looks like Iron Man grabs the plane and he gets to do a water landing. So clever. I kind of like that too. It's interesting. I feel like the plane would rip out of his hands, but since it's a Boeing aircraft, it's well made. I mean, if this was Airbus, we'd be in real trouble, right? And they didn't really have Airbus then, did they?
Maybe just in France. I don't know.
It's before the European subsidies.
Yeah.
I literally have no idea. Airbus, Boeing, they're all planes. They fly. So you're there, and here they've got everybody. They save everybody in the rafts, and some boats came to help them. And some PT boats come out, and they take everybody and they take them back home, I think.
No, they don't take them home. They take them to a place to go get checked out.
Oh, they took them to a top secret classified island.
Yes.
And then he's meeting some secret police. Those aren't the Science Police, because that's in DC Comics.
Police.
Well, anyway, we find out that this crazy old man's been attacking these poor military folks. And after the government used the island to dump radioactive waste on it. And this crazy old man won't leave, and he's attacking everybody, and they want to get him off for his own safety. And now they want Iron Man to help because Namor, the Submariner, came and attacked everyone, and he's just a bad guy. And now they want Iron Man to help. And then once they get through that with Tony Stark in the Iron Man visage, of course, the leader says, "Don't worry, Morgan, with a little luck, they'll scrag each other. And the island, along with its secret, will remain ours alone." Shouldn't his mustache be twirly at the end?
Twirly at the end, maybe so.
Yeah, he's like doing a... Well, in moments later, we have Iron Man flying up in the sky, and Namor sees him. And he says, "So, Hiram Dobbs, your fellow surface men send a champion against me. And a familiar one as well. They are fools." And
fools.
Iron Man's like, "Prince Namor, I mean you no harm." He throws a rock at him. So that's I guess that's where the cover comes from. I would just say, if you're looking at him picking up that rock, I don't recommend that form with the ankle bent like that. It looks like he's probably breaking a leg. Does Namor always have wings on his ankles?
I don't know.
Is this an original thing? I know he could fly, right? So, but did he always have wings on his ankles? It just seems like a very inefficient flying method.
Yeah, it seems kind of...
But Namor is supposed to be the first mutant, right? So that's the whole deal. Namor was a mutant before even the X-Men, correct?
I believe so.
Theoretically. Well, Namor was in the big comics from the 40s with the original Human Torch and Captain America. So long history there.
Yeah.
And we were getting a big fight. And of course, Namor has some weird thing for Sue Storm too, right?
I believe so. Yes, he does.
Well, anyway, they're fighting back and forth, and Iron Man gives him an iron hook.
And
Namor goes flying. And there's some dialogue in here, but I don't know that the dialogue's that important. They're fighting.
They're just fighting. It's a lot of fighting.
But there's a lot of, "I considered you a noble foe. Why are we fighting?" And then finally, okay, we get to our break. Our Hiram shoots Iron Man.
Kapow!
And the bullets
Blast
scarcely
off.
dent the armor, but the impact, unexpected startling, throwing the wearer off balance just for 1 second, and then he gets taken in the water. Now, there is one thing I would say that I forgot to point out as he was saving the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
Iron Man does mention that maybe if he hadn't been drinking so much, this wouldn't be so bad.
Yeah.
He'd do a little bit better. So he's becoming a little bit self-aware that he might have a problem.
He's like, "I have a problem."
But now we flip scenes completely, and we get a time skip of 15 minutes ago. Stark International Airport, Long Island. He has his own airport in Long Island. It's not Islip, it's Stark International. That's cool. So Miss Cave, it says, "I want to thank you again, Rhodey, for clearing me to meet Tony Shuttle from JFK. No problem, Miss Cave. I've been with the man ever since Nam." Has he? Because didn't he just show up a couple issues ago?
I think they were on that when Tony was there, and Rhodey was with him as part of the detachment.
Okay. So here we go, and they're friends. Anyway, they're becoming friends, it looks like. And then Mr. Arbogast, his secretary, who, by the way, we were talking about the funny characters. I don't want them everywhere, but I love her. I love the secretary. She's fantastic. We'll explore her a little bit more. This is where I think that Layton and Michelinie did a really good job, inserting a character that's just kind of inherently funny in the way she interacts with the world around her. It's like this gatekeeping secretary, but she happens to work for Tony Stark. You've mentioned that before, putting characters in situations they don't belong in.
Yeah.
And then just seeing how they interact with the world and letting that play out. And I do love her in the way things go.
Yeah. She's a great foil in some ways.
Yeah. And she shows up, and all of a sudden she's like, "There's trouble." So the two take off and to go find Iron Man. So they're headed on their way. So Iron Man's in a fight. So now they're fighting in the water, and it seems like wearing an iron suit that's propelled by energy would be bad in the
water.
Yeah.
Not very effective.
And he boils the water to get Namor. It's interesting because Namor's weakness is alcohol, right?
I think so.
So why did he just breathe on him earlier?
He could have. Yeah. Hello.
I mean, after 4 martinis on on a flight, you probably could do pretty well. Just breathe on him, and he'd leave you alone.
He'd be like, "Oh, what's that? Get away from me!"
Well, and then we get another scene change. We're still fighting underwater. An interjection that very moment somewhere in the Mediterranean. Yes, Mr. Hammer, these final readouts are conclusive. Phase 1 of our test program yielded 100% positive results. He's like, that's most encouraging. He still has no suspicions he's been manipulated. So a couple issues ago to Iron Man's suit malfunctioned.
He's got some issues.
And so he's trying to figure out what's going on. And so they said they're going to proceed to phase 2 at once. And he thinks he should find the results most interesting. So here we go. And he's in the water. And all of a sudden, his plexiglass eye slits and mouth slip open up. And he is dead in the water.
Oh, no.
It's probably not good to fill up an iron suit while you're in the water.
No, not good at all. I would think he's not made of ivory, like ivory soap. And he will not float. Because ivory soap
And Mr.
floats.
Hammer thinks this is a successful endeavor.
Yes.
And that's where we end our friend here in issue 120.
Oh man, this is disaster right here. Iron Man sinking to the bottom of the ocean.
Well, should we go for 121? Or should we leave the listeners hanging and waiting in anticipation for 121? After all, dear listeners, we've given you some hour-and-a-half long podcasts, so this might be a great time to give you a 35-minute podcast.
A nice, short, good, quick listen. We can talk a little bit about some of the other things if you wish.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think this is a good pause point, and we're going to follow up with the next issue 121 on the next podcast.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good start to the story. And I think in the next podcast too, we will talk a little bit about how this ties in with Wakanda Forever.
Oh yeah. I like as when you talked about it, and I mean obviously I'm not daft. I know like the characters and everything that's in the movie. So I'm like, okay, yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, I need to watch it.
Well, yeah, maybe you could watch it before we podcast again because, hey, I think you're going to be snowed in.
That's true. I might just have to.
I wouldn't say it's my favorite Marvel movie, but it is pretty.
Yeah.
Just leave it at that. I don't want to spoil anything else.
Okay.
It's pretty. It's very pretty.
All right.
And so, yeah, I don't know. Got stuff to plug?
Stuff to plug. Go get I don't have any current works to plug, but
okay. Well, that makes it really easy.
Yeah, makes it really
easy. Follow us
on
Funny Book Forensics on Twitter, as long as Twitter is still out there, or Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah,
and you'll see our latest posts. We're also on the scpod.net, spoiler country,
the mothership.
Find our the mothership. Yeah, so yeah, it's good, and we've been interacting with John. Expect some great stuff at the start of the year, and in fact, this podcast will probably go up at the start of the year. So wibbly wibby timey wimey, and it will show up there because I have some more Titans podcasts to share with everyone, and so I'm going to make sure those all get out there for you. Sweet. So go back 3 podcasts, 1, 2, 3. We just reviewed New Teen Titans drug issues, which are riot or sad or depressing or super funny. We're not really sure which.
They were an experience, and I'm going to say that. So, I mean, you should definitely listen to them. If you get a chance to read them, take a look at those books and make your own opinions.
But I feel like we're off to a much better path now. So I'm excited. And I know John and Kendrick will be re-kicking off the mothership here at the start of the year. So a lot of things happening at the spoiler country, and come check us out.
Do that. I will tell you the name of the 747 designer and He-Man designer. Roger Sweet is the name. Okay. So also might have made the bottle that everyone knows is the Downy bottle.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, that's
a lot
fantastic.
Of other things.
So he designed the 747 that Adam Sandler was on when he made his proposal.
Well, the interior, yeah.
There we go.
And scope packages. What?
Well, see, That's a guy, and He-Man.
And He-Man.
So there you go. Well, I don't really know how we can top that.
I don't know. I mean, it's just a bunch of cool stuff.
Well, I say let's close this one out, and we will see you next time for issue 121. And if you want to read along with us, we're reading on Marvel Universe, the app or the website, so you can join in with Marvel Universe. And if you have a Disney Plus password, I believe you can also log into Marvel Universe. And a lot of people have that, so you can double up there. Of course, you could also get it on Comixology as well. And if you manage to have the hard copy, just message me and I'll give you my address and you can send it right over.
Oh, Dan.
And you can bill John at Spoiler Country.
John, yeah. Bill John at Spoiler Country.
Yeah. Sounds good to me. Yeah. Seems like a wrap.
Sounds perfect. It's
all right,
a Christmas gift.
Thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of Funny Book Forensics.